Hello, friends of the early morning. I hope your life is shining brightly because today we will walk through the shadows of our own lineage. 3 families, 3 stories marked by secrets, curses, and pacts that time has tried to hide. Stories where blood speaks, where the past whispers, and where each generation pays the price for the mistakes of those who came before. But be careful, because listening to these stories may remind you of something, an old object in your home, a portrait that always seemed strange, or perhaps a name repeated too often in your family tree. Grab your headphones, turn off the lights, and journey with us. Because tonight, brave souls, we will discover the secrets of the ancestors together.
Story 1. The House Where the Blood Called. Have you ever wondered what would happen if you discovered that evil ran in your family? Some secrets are so old that they remain hidden in the walls, in photographs, and sometimes within the flesh itself. When Elisa's father died, she inherited an old house in the countryside of Minas Gerais. She had never been there, but the deed stated that the property had belonged to the family for over 100 years. On the facade, the darkened wood and crooked windows seemed to watch visitors like tired eyes that had seen too much. Elisa went alone. The house smelled of mold and burnt wax, as if candles had been lit there until the last moment. In the main hallway, family portraits covered the walls, but something was wrong. In all of them, the people's eyes seemed blurred, as if someone had deliberately erased them. That night, a storm began. Elisa woke to the sound of heavy footsteps downstairs. She grabbed her phone and went downstairs slowly, filming her way. The doors slammed shut and a cold wind blew through the hallway, coming from the basement whose door was ajar. She had never seen that door before. When she pushed it open, she heard a metallic sound, like chains dragging. As she went downstairs, the light on her phone began to flicker, and deep in the basement was an ancient altar covered in burned photos and small bones tied with red ribbons. Among the photos, she recognized her father's face and her own, cut and pasted with dried blood. Frightened, she tried to leave, but the house gate was locked. The windows slammed shut, and whispers began to echo through the rooms. The blood calls, the blood calls, the blood calls. Elisa ran upstairs to her room, locked the door, and hid under the bed. But the footsteps continued, slowly, until they stopped right in front of the door. She heard the doorknob turn, and a female voice murmured, "You finally returned, my granddaughter." The door opened with a click, and Elisa saw a woman identical to her, but with a pale face and black, completely dull eyes. The woman approached, knelt, and rested her forehead against hers. Instantly, memories that weren't hers surfaced, rituals, blood being poured into goblets, promises made at midnight, and a phrase echoed in her head. No generation can escape the pact. Blood pays, and blood is reborn. Elisa woke up in the morning, but she wasn't the same. Neighbors swear they saw her leave the house smiling, her eyes vacant, her clothes stained with dirt. Days later, the police found the basement completely clean, the altar gone, and on the floor, only a phrase written in ash. The blood answered the call. They say the secrets of the ancestors never die. They just wait for the next in the lineage to hear the call. And when that happens, it's too late to go back.
Story 2. Great-grandmother's ashes. Some families keep memories in photo albums. Others preferred to keep the ashes of what remains. But what if what was burned was still alive, waiting to return? Isabella always found her mother's silence when it came to her great-grandmother strange. It was said only that she died sickly and that her body was never buried, only hastily cremated. Years later, when her mother passed away, Isabella was responsible for cleaning the family's old mansion, isolated on top of a hill. While cleaning, she found a clay urn hidden behind a closet. There was no name, just a red ribbon tied around it, with hand-scratched symbols. When she touched it, the clay felt warm, as if it had been left there just minutes ago. At the bottom of the urn, precisely engraved, were the initials A.M., Alicia Montenegro, her great-grandmother's name. That night, the living room clock stopped at 3:14 a.m., the same time, according to the death certificate, her great-grandmother had died. Shortly afterward, she heard a faint sound, like nails scratching wood coming from the next room. She went there and saw the urn on the floor, open, the ashes scattered, slowly forming the imprint of a hand on the floor. Frightened, she cleaned everything and locked the room. But when she looked in the mirror, she noticed that part of her hand was covered in a dark powder. She tried to wash it off, but the powder stuck to her skin, seeping into her pores as if trying to get in. In the following days, strange dreams began. Isabella saw a woman dressed in black, her back turned, combing her hair in front of an antique mirror. She whispered phrases in Latin, and sometimes her own reflection responded, until one night the woman turned her face, and it was herself, older, with completely gray eyes. Determined to understand, Isabella searched for old records and found a diary. There she discovered that her great-grandmother had been accused of practicing soul transfer rituals, trying to escape death by inhabiting a young body from her own lineage. The cremation had just been a sham. The ritual required that the ashes be saved for the spirit to return when the blood was ready. On her last night, Isabella awoke to the sound of the urn breaking. The whole house shook. She ran to the bedroom, and there was the woman's figure, pale, her gray eyes glowing in the darkness. She approached, smiled, and said, "Thank you for bringing me back, my granddaughter." Isabella tried to run away, but the door closed of its own accord. The ashes began to float, covering her face, getting into her eyes and into her mouth. She screamed, but the voice that came out wasn't hers anymore. Days later, neighbors said Isabella reappeared at the gate, smiling and waving, but those who knew her noticed something strange. She now wore the same necklace as her great-grandmother, and when they called her name, she responded, "Alicia, Alicia Montenegro." They see that blood can carry memories, but sometimes it carries entire souls. And when they return, they don't always ask permission to stay. Story 3: Things Buried in the Backyard. Some families bury their dead with flowers. Others bury their sins. But the problem is that what lies in the earth always tries to resurface. After his father's death, Kao inherited the land where he grew up, an old farmhouse overrun with gnarled trees and the smell of damp earth. He didn't want to go back there. He had too many memories, too many nightmares. But he needed to sell the place, and to do that, he needed to clean it up. During his first day of work, while weeding the yard, the hoe hit something hard. He thought it was a rock until he heard a hollow sound like old wood. He dug a little more and found a child's box, covered in dirt and roots. Inside it were a small white dress, a faceless doll, and a rusty wedding ring. At the bottom, a yellowed note read, "So she never comes back." Ko didn't understand. He thought it was some old memory, but that night, the wind seemed different. As he slept, he heard noises coming from the backyard, light footsteps like a child running through wet earth. The window opened by itself, and the smell of fresh earth filled the room. When he looked outside, he saw small, barefoot prints leading to the hole he had dug. The spot where the box had been was now empty. The next morning, Ko tried to convince himself it had all been a dream, but he found the faceless doll on the porch, covered in mud. The wood around the house was scratched with small but deep marks, as if children's nails had tried to get in. That afternoon, an elderly neighbor appeared, looking frightened at the land. She asked, You dug it up, didn't you?" Ko answered yes, confused, and she, trembling, murmured, "Your father swore she'd never leave there again, that evil was born within the house." That night, the noise returned, but this time it came from inside the house. Footsteps, the faint laughter of a girl. Ko went downstairs with a flashlight. In the hallway, he saw muddy footprints leading to the living room. Then there was the girl, her back turned, her white dress soaked, her hair covering her face. When she turned, her face was identical to that of Ko's mother when she was young. She held the doll and whispered, "You took me from the earth, brother. Now we are a family again." Ko fell to his knees, and the lights in the house flickered. From the floor, hands began to emerge, pulling him by the leg, by the waist, hands of people he'd never seen, but who all seemed to have the same face, his mother's. The last thing heard was the sound of something being dragged into the backyard. Days later, the police found the abandoned house. In the backyard, the same hole, now covered with earth again, and above it, a new wooden box, sealed, with a note stuck to the lid, written in crooked letters, "So he never comes back." Some family secrets aren't meant to be unearthed, because sometimes what's under the earth isn't dead, just waiting for someone to call it back.
And so, brave souls, you were closer than ever to the supernatural. Don't look back. Don't try to find explanations. Just go to sleep, if you can. Remember, our past hides things, secrets that some families never told, mistakes that echo through generations, and forces that still walk silently among us. If you felt a shiver run down your spine, if your heart raced as you heard the stories, like it, follow the channel, because only then will you be able to witness the darkest aspects of our daily lives, and perhaps discover that evil isn't just in stories. It's in those you least expect, maybe even in you. Until next night, if you have the courage.